Hello, happy people. I hope that you are having just a most pleasant day today. Today we're going to be taking a look at H.P. Lovecraft's short story Celephaïs, which is set in his Dreamlands. I have my copy of it here in my Dreams of Death and Terror collection. I'll link you to that online so you can follow along if you're interested in buying the book. Also, all of H.P. Lovecraft's stuff is past its copyright date, so I'll also link you to a free version in case you don't want to spend any money. You'll have both the budget way and the way like me to read things in print. Because there's just something about me as a bibliophile that I enjoy. Anyway, I read it last night again for the second time. It's a lot of the stuff that H.P. Lovecraft has written in his Dreamlands are really short, and this is only 6 pages long. It might have taken me a little under 15 minutes for me to knock that out a second time, and I really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed the central idea. Many of the Dreamlands ideas is that these are sort of fantasy-ish, horror-ish, leaning more to the fantasy side, if you will. The pure horror stuff that he does in the Cthulhu Mythos and in other works, or earlier in his career, which he kind of begins to mimic Edgar Allan Poe with stories like The Rats in the Walls, which I reviewed for you, as well as some of his later stuff in the Cthulhu Mythos. But he has this sort of middle chapter in his life where he's doing some fantasy stuff in sort of the oeuvre of Lord Dunsany, and it's set in this dream setting that a person can access through dreams or portals, or these other sorts of things. And that's what's going to be happening with Celephaïs. What's going to wind up happening is that our protagonist in this short story is an artist, a writer, and he really enjoys evoking the things that he gets from his dreamland. And he finds that to be much better than the fanciful stuff that people are doing, that they're just creating. There's a realness to it, an authenticity to his dreams that he brings out. And so he loves it. And so he travels to various places in his dreams. But he's been recently blocked from visiting a few places. And so we'll find out more about that in the 6 pages. Very soon he'll go back to one of his favorite places, it's a city called Celephaïs, among which this short story is named. And we'll get probably a page or 2 out of the 6 for a description of Celephaïs. And then after that, he'll leave, and then he won't be able to get back to Celephaïs. And so then the rest of the story is his journey to get back to Celephaïs. And so we'll follow along with probably the latter 60% or half or so of the short story is following his journey to try to get back to Celephaïs, because his dreams just aren't working. We'll follow along and see what he's doing, and what will happen, and what will wind up occurring. And this one is pure fantasy. It's not even a little bit horror into it, although some of his will actually be fantasy and horror. In the Dreamlands, this one's just pure fantasy, and the fantasy elements in it are light. It's just somebody who's dreaming and enters another world, and that world is different than ours, but it's not like wizards and magic staffs and dragons, right? It's not that kind of a hard fantasy. It's much more of a softer fantasy where you have the central core idea of transplanting from here to a dream world. Obviously, is a fanciful one. It's not a science fiction one, and then the world that he's in is different, but it's more like Middle Ages different. There are knights, and the architecture of Celephaïs is more of a Middle Age style thing. So it has that sort of accoutrements, if you will, the details of fantasy, but it's not. I would not say it's a true fantasy. No, it's really short, so it's hard to say. I'm going to give a 6-page short story set in the Dreamlands, but Lovecraft does a good job with his descriptions of the city and the dreaming and that sort of a thing, and you definitely enjoy it. But I wouldn't say it's one of his strongest dream pieces. But I liked it. But I wanted to go back to it again, so there was something to it that said to me, "Hey, read me again." And I've been a little bit more into dreams ever since I encountered George MacDonald's the set of short stories that I'm reading for you and unpacking for you too. And that has fairy stories and lands that you get to through dreaming, and goes over dreams of various characters. And when I was reading, I was like, is this where all this dream stuff that later fantasists like Lord Dunsany or H.P. Lovecraft sort of copied? And so my appreciation for the Dreamlands which was previously Why is this horror writer doing so much fantasy? Or now I think deepened, and so I've wanted to go back to that well, if you will. Now this short story does name drop Lang, which is in the Cthulhu Mythos, and Innsmouth in the real world, which is also in the Cthulhu Mythos too. So the question of, is the Dreamland cycle in the Cthulhu Mythos proper, I'll leave to Lovecraft scholars. I think it is, because, you know, it does name drop a lot of the same things. Characters are in both. So I'd say my opinion is yes, but if you disagree, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it, right? I'm not going to go to the mattresses for, oh my gosh, this isn't the same thing. You know, but if it's by the same author and it name calls the person who created the Cthulhu Mythos, then I would say that stuff like Celephaïs is in the Cthulhu Mythos in the Dream Cycle. But hey, I'll leave that to people that to people that can fight over that, who are more interested in it than I am. But anyway, there you are. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. It's Lovecraft. He's good. He's a strong writer, and there's something to it. It's probably more like a 7.75 or something like that. But I'm rounding up to a 10 rounding up to an 8 out of 10 because it's well done. There was something to it that brought me back to it, so I definitely enjoyed it. So have you read Celephaïs? What'd you think of it? Did you agree or disagree with my take on it? Did you think it's not in the mythos? I would be more than happy to engage with it further in the comments below, whatever your take is on it, whether you agree or disagree.